Hello, it is April 10th, 2024. This is Madeline Flint working with the Florida Queer History Project. And if we could go ahead and start with your full name,
Yes.
spelled for the record as well.
My full name is Dayanna Peek. First name is spelled Dayanna. Last name Peek is spelled Peek.
Awesome. Okay, so where and when were you born?
I was born on January 25th, 2002 in Kissimmee, Florida.
Awesome. And then how do you identify your pronouns, sexual orientation, gender expression, race, anything you want to touch on?
I first identify as Black, and then I identify as a queer, non-binary individual. And my pronouns are they, them.
Awesome. Okay. So, getting into your identity in general, we're going to go ahead and talk about your upbringing and your family if you're comfortable. So, just go ahead and discuss the culture and environment that you grew up in and your relationship with that aspect of your identity today, and in what ways it helped or hindered your expression.
So I was raised by my two great grandparents. They're both Jamaican immigrants. They came to the US in the early 90s. They first came to New York and then they settled down in Florida in the early 2000s. Um, my mom and my grandma were also born in Jamaica, then came to the US later on in life, my mom then settled down in Florida late into her early into her 20s, and that's where she met my father. Um, they met and they had me, but they were never married. So I grew up in a split household, raised primarily by my great grandparents. My mother was in the house, but she wasn't really there present due to her very intense work schedule. So she worked nights at the local county jail. And so her work schedule was like she would leave for work around 4 p.m. and that's the time that I'd be getting home. And she would get home around 7 a.m. So that'd be the time that I would be leaving for school. So I didn't really get a lot of like a one-on-one time with her because when she would be home on her days off, she would be very like tired and sleepy. So a lot of my perspective on life comes from my Jamaican born immigrant great grandparents. They raised me with a lot of patience, a lot of care, and a lot of respect. And even though, the culture of Jamaica is known to be widely homophobic, transphobic, and against anything that is outside of the, lens of heteronormativity, they did not regard that during my upbringing. My gender identity or my expression was never really a concern for them. While I was growing up, I did involve myself in more masculine activities. I loved to ripstick and skateboard and play basketball and play with the boys in the neighborhood. I also loved Beyblade, Bakugan, Yu-Gi-Oh, and overall just like board games, anything dealing with the mind, having fun and being outside. So a lot of my traits of being queer as in outside of the norm, did start early on. And that was never really an issue for them because they saw me for being their great grandchild, which was the most important thing to them. And as long as I stayed in school and I did what I had to do, what I did outside of that wasn't really a concern for them. I'd say on the flip side, though, that there was an issue on my father's side. Now, I know we'll probably get into this later, but his issue with my gender identity during my upbringing was due to his religious background. He is an African American male born in Apopka, Florida, and has family roots in North Central Florida, so Stark, Lake City, Ocala area, etc. So he was not very receptive nor accepting towards me as a more masculine presenting individual. Um, but yeah, that's about it for my upbringing.
Awesome. I'm glad you had that support system, that you were able to move about generally
Mhm.
freely.
Thank you.
So I guess on that same vein, how do you think you partially answered it, but we'll just go more into detail. How you think your upbringing influenced your queer identity and your expression of it? So that could be any life stories that come to mind, if that's your coming out, when and how you knew you were queer, and then if there's any reception from your friends and family that you haven't touched on.
Hmm. So in my process of coming out, I kind of did it kind of like abruptly. Um, the way that I did it, I shaved all my hair off during my freshman year of high school, and that came as a shocker to a lot of people. But my great grandparents, I didn't mention it. Like I didn't really say. I just cut my hair, and they're like, okay. I didn't really come out formally to them until a couple, like 2 years, a year and a half later. But when I did, they told me that they already knew that I was queer. They knew since I was small. Um, so in regards to other family members, it's been a little difficult connecting with them on that basis. Number one, because of religious background, and number two, outside of I think that my great grandparents are kind of like the anomaly because they're raised in the countryside of a country that is homophobic. You know what I mean? So they're the anomaly to the general population that regards queer Jamaicans as like a batiman. That's a slur used against queer Jamaicans. And there's a popular song. It's like "Fire Make We Burn Them." That's in regards to like setting queer people ablaze with fire. So it's really like deeply embedded in the culture, and so um, it's kind of difficult being able to connect with other family members on that basis of my like homosexuality. Um, but I still live freely. I live to be who I am. And the main issue is that I can't really go back to the country to Jamaica uh, masculine presenting. If I do go back, and this is what I had to do in 2019 when that was the last time I went back to Jamaica, and I was with family for about 2 months. I had to like put box braids in. I had to get acrylic nails. So there's a lot of masking that I had to do in order to conceal my queer identity. Um, is it okay if you could read back the question again?
Yeah. No, I
Mhm.
mean, you're answering it. I really was just, it's just life stories. Yeah.
Understood.
So you're coming out when you knew you were queer and then reception from family. So you've touched on a lot of it, but um, yeah, if you want to talk about your own personal timeline, like what socialized you, I guess, to kind of figure out your identity.
Mhm.
But like finish your thought with your family, definitely.
Yes, yes, yes. So going to Jamaica in 2019, and definitely, like they said, like hiding myself with hair, with nails, and not even I can't even mention my attraction for women. That's something that's like barred. And if you tell one person, they're going to tell it to someone else, and it just becomes a domino effect. And if you're in the country for like that period of time, you don't want to set yourself up in a position where you could end up in a harmful situation. So just masking myself and my identity. And yeah, it's interesting going to a country that is like your like homeland at the end of the day, but there is a bit of disconnect from it. In regards to my own timeline, so I cut my hair, like I had like hair, and then I went like full buzz cut. This was December 2016. This was my freshman year of high school. When my dad saw I had cut my hair, he had the most negative reaction out of anyone in my family. On the ride, so again, to review, we live in separate households, but he would sometimes come and pick me up on the weekend to take me to his house in Orlando. So he picked me up, it was silent. Then we went back to like on the drive back to his home in West Orlando, um, he said he was just. I'll give you an example. It's very offensive. He was like, "You look like a fucking Somalian." You know what I mean? Like him trying to say that I'm bald, so I resemble. You know what I mean? And he just started doing like slur after slur. He's like, "You want to be a fucking man?" Like just like a lot of like negative references about my hair, and also like just dehumanizing me for my decision to not be, like this stereotypical child that he desired, or the stereotypical female child that he desired. So I started crying, and I cried all the way till he got back to his house, and then I kind of locked myself in my room, and I didn't talk to him. So I didn't formally come out to him until about, I'd say, a year and a half later, but it wasn't a voluntary come out. So essentially, he had gotten like used to me like cutting my hair, and he had took me out to get a haircut because my hair was growing out. And on the drive back to his house, he was like, "I know what you are." I said, "What? What do you mean?" He's like, "I know what you are. Just say it." And I was telling him, like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what are you referring to?" Like, and he's like, "I know what you fucking are. Tell me." And I knew, like, deep in my like head, like when the first time he said that, I knew what he was referring to. I was just like acting like I didn't know what he was talking about. But I was like, "Yeah, I'm gay." And he was like, "Okay, well, I won't judge you now, but you'll be judged in the afterlife," referring to like, heaven, like me going to hell and stuff like that for being gay. Back to the whole religious thing. But that was that. So that was like 2018 ish. Yeah, I'd say like I didn't really have like a formal coming out to like my friend group in high school. It was just like kind of like assumed that I was just like queer. I presented queer, I had short hair, I dressed masculine. So there wasn't really like a need for me to like say, "Hey guys, I'm gay." I just could see it on my face. Um, I'd say that's been kind of like the timeline like that. But with me discovering that I was non-binary, this was pretty recent. This was 2020, early 2022. Um, so I am one of the founders of the Lavender LLC, and I also became the resident assistant, one of the two specialty resident assistants for the space in its first year of inception. And I had a bunch of residents on my floor, and I was living on the same floor as some of them, but there's residents on the floor below. So I was living on floor 4, and I also had residents on floor 3. So on floor 4, I became close with this one resident named Ren. And this individual, during our like first floor meeting, um, I was like, "Okay, guys, like, what's your name? What's your pronouns? And something interesting about yourself." And then I started off with myself. I said, "Hey guys, my name is Day. My pronouns are she, her." And I saw the look on Ren's face. Ren was just like looking confused. And so I brushed it off because I'm like, okay. But we did the activity. The floor meeting ended, and then some residents were like chilling in like the lounge area. And so I went over there, I'm like, "Hey, what's up, everyone?" And Rem was like, "You're cis?" And I'm like, yes, I am. Like I was like unsure at that point. I was like, "Am I cis?" So Ren kind of like questioning it made me kind of like speed up the process of my discovery. And so through like my residence, I became really comfortable with expressing my identity, and just learning about what being trans is, because I identify as a trans individual as well. Um, my identity is very like expansive, but nothing at the same time. And I've really only come to that because of my residence.
That's awesome.
Mm.
It's funny how I feel like in a lot of queer spaces, sometimes you just need that like blunt statement to
Yeah,
make you realize. So
right,
even if it comes as a shock, I'm glad that that helped with your process.
right.
So I'll kind of finish off our conversation on religion. We don't have to drag that one too much. But the questions that I was going to ask are just if religion played a role in your own self perception or identification. So if you had any personal experiences or alignment with any kind of religion, or I guess how religion played into your identity.
Right. So I was raised Baptist. My grandmother on my father's side, she played organ and keyboard, piano for the church, and my dad also played the drums. So they're heavily involved. So that means that I was heavily involved whenever I would be around them. And then with on my Jamaican side, where I was raised, they're also religious as well, Baptists. So oftentimes Sundays was filled with going to church, and things of that nature. I say that religion, like for me personally, I've grown. I've disassociated from religion as I've grown into my identity. Because for me personally, my lifestyle does not really align with what is understood to be in the text. And I just haven't found time, even for spirituality, even. I'm just like a being, just like existing. I do think about like, there is a higher power, but I don't know exactly what that is. And in regards to how religion has like influenced my sexuality, kind of made me suppress it for a bit during my time growing up, because as I told you, like I was very into like masculine activities and things of that nature. So religion kind of made me be like, okay, like it's not proper to do this, Sodom and Gomorrah, and the phrase saying, "Oh, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve." So being raised with these homophobic tropes and anecdotes really kind of put it in my head, like, hey, like maybe not, maybe not, maybe that's not something you should do. But yeah, as I got more into my queer identity, I pushed religion to the side and just became my own person.
Awesome. Do you think you had like a deep internalization of that hatred, or do you think it was something that you acknowledged when you were younger but chose to separate from yourself? Like, did it hinder you too much as you grew, or?
Not really. No, it didn't hinder
That's
me a
awesome.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad it didn't.
Yeah. The church can be a scary place sometimes. So,
Yes.
but I think if you find community outside of the church, that usually is what helps.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's see. I think were there any institutions that influenced your perception of the community, like outside of religion and your general interactions with family and friends? Like, did you find space in education or media or anything that influenced that?
That's a good question. Oh, it was through like, so when I was like late middle school, yeah, like late middle school and early high school, I was really into anime and making AMVs, which are anime music videos, and so I was really involved in the editing community, and like just like the anime editing, game editing community in ways like they are like queer communities. It's just like communities that are like very accepting towards like your interests. Like, hey, like you can like Yuri and Yaoi and you're chill. So like I was able to like look at like as like Yuri and Yaoi, which are like GL, gay love, boys love, BL, and GL. Sorry, Yuri is like lesbian stuff. Yaui's like gay stuff, right? So I would like watch like a bunch of this anime and like just be like okay, like this is interesting. Um, and I would sometimes edit some Yuri stuff, and like just me like involving myself in that process of like okay, watching it now. I'm gonna take these clips and I'm gonna splice them up, put audio track, do some stuff in Adobe After Effects, make it look cool. Like I was just like immersed in like queerness because of like the editing community that I was involved in.
That's awesome. I
Mm-hmm.
think that carries over in an interesting way to like your current passions. I think you could talk about that now if you wanted to, like your, I guess, collaboration of media and creativity and queerness.
Yes.
If you want to talk about that now, you're more
Yeah,
than
oh,
welcome to.
definitely. So, I am the founder of the Sapphic Party, and I started this party around like July 2021. That was like the first party I ever threw. And it was like chill vibes, invite only, about like 50 people. There was no DJ. We had like music blasting on the TV screen. Um, and I got all the drinks. I was like, everyone come, like it's gonna be a fun time. I got inspired by like I saw a TikTok of these lesbians in LA, like these older lesbians, like 30 plus, and they're like, hey, like this is what it's like at a lesbian party, like yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm recreating this college style, right? So I did that and it was bump. Like it was fun. Like imagine you get like 50 of like the gayest people you know in a room, like it's gonna be fun, you know?
Mm.
So after that, me and my friend Sayla, so at first I threw the first one at Sophia with Sophia, and then I threw the second one with Sayla at Sayla's place, and you went to that one, right?
I was there. I
That
was
was
there.
the second ever one. It was Halloween, and it was bummed too until the police came and everyone scattered out the back like little ants. But the party has like honestly like grown like a lot since then, and it's become like a statewide kind of event. um I've thrown the party twice in Tallahassee. I have one coming up April 20th 2024 in Orlando. I say the average attendance at these parties is around like 300. So it's just like a bunch of like people coming from all parts of the state just to experience community. Um, and the way that I'm able to market to these communities across the state is really through Instagram, social media. Um, I run ads on like the flyer posts, and I like create like specific like audience segmentation. So like for example, for the Sapphic Party Tallahassee, um, I'll set it okay, like I want to reach to the audience based in Tallahassee, Live Oak, Pensacola, eh, not really Pensacola, but like that general area, you know. And then I set their interests, right? So like, you know, they're interested in gay bar, they're interested in party, they're interested in nightlife, you know what I mean? And so that really attracts the people. And also I've really been developing the feed of the page. So it looks like something that a young queer individual would be interested in going. So when they see like that visualizer, people send it to their friends. They're like, hey, like there's no cis men at this party. We have to go out. It's just like a lot of points of interest for these like young queer individuals across the state of Florida. So at this party, like I also DJ at the party as well. Like I really want to create like a vibe, like a yeah, just like a vibe that people can have fun to. People end up like meeting their next lover there. People end up having their first gay kiss there. Like it's always like a time of first for a lot of people. And I really just wanted to be a space that, sapphics feel that they can like explore, um, not even just like their sexuality, but just explore their identity as well. You know what I mean? So it's really been an honor to like cultivate the space to what it is at today, and to see the amount of lives that are actually being impacted by the presence of this party.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so proud of you for it. It's
Thank
incredible.
you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So do you think that if there are any other moments or spaces as well, you can mention them, but would you find that would be like the most safe, comfortable space that you've been able to create or immerse yourself in your time in Gainesville? Or
Yeah, I'd say like between the Sapphic Party and the Lavender LLC, like those are just like physical spaces that individuals can like immerse themselves into based off of like their queer identity, which I think is like super important. Just like in general, we don't have a lot of queer spaces that, we can be in. Like for example, this happened like a few weeks or months ago. I saw on TikTok that there is like this incident that happened in Henrietta Hudson's in New York, and mind you, there's only like a couple, like a handful of like lesbian bars based in New York. Like there's probably less than five. Um, and no, definitely less than five. And this individual who is a lesbian woman, she encountered a male in this space, and he was physically taking up a lot of space. And there ended up being an altercation. One of the individuals from like the friend group of the guy came on TikTok talking all this nonsense, and then the lesbian that had the altercation had to come and defend her name. So as you see, like there's like a bunch of incidents across the country where there's a lack of this space, and there's individuals that are straight and cis that are infiltrating them. So I think it's really important that we create these spaces and cultivate them, and also gatekeep them. Like I don't like I think we should gatekeep queer spaces for queer people.
I agree. Yeah. I think on that vein, my question left my mind. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like oftentimes queer spaces are meant to be like inclusive, in quote, and open, but in a sense, like that's the one space that you get, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I think to be able to create that here is really important. Have you faced those, like, not necessarily that like physical aggression at your parties, but have there been any times where you've faced even like over sexualization or fetishization of like the crowds that you're bringing together, even like over social media, in person, anything?
That's a good question. For over sexualization, honestly, not really. No, like the amount, like the only type of like backlash that there's been is come from cis men that feel threatened by the party. They're like, oh, why can't I come? Like, let me see if I could pull up a screenshot where a man, he reposted to this story. Let me see if I could find this. Hopefully I still have it. But essentially he was upset that he couldn't come, and he posted his story, oh, I'm throwing my own party, cis men only, for people that are allies of the community, like just like talking, and he like reposted the flyer to his story. So he was, I don't know what this dude was on, but like there, men do feel threatened by spaces that exclude them. But at the same, like at the time, like they should recognize like this world was built for their advancement, and it champions cis straight white men. So let us have this one thing. If you want to go and create a cis men only party or a sausage party, go ahead and do that. That's up to you, you know?
Thank you. So If there are any last things you want to say on that topic, you're more than welcome to. And then we'll kind of go into the questions more on like femininity, masculinity,
Mhm.
areas like that. So is there anything else you want to round out with on that?
Mm. I should also bring up the New Day scholarship.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
um, so I'm the founder of the New Day Scholarship, which is a $500 scholarship for Black queer femmes that attend UF. And I initially started it with my own funding. This was started in spring of 2022. And at the time, I was working like three different jobs. So I was an RA, I was a busser at the top, and also like a freelance photographer, videographer. So from the money that I was making, I was putting money aside, and then I was able to just raise up 500. And I had like noticed that there was a lack of, number one, transparent financial opportunities outside of those like within like UF, because like there's like the niche scholarships or like the quote like the no essay scholarships, but the timelines are always messed up. Lack of communication. There's just a bunch of flaws in the system. So I'm like, okay, what can I do to address this? Okay, I'll make my own. And that's something about me. Like, if I don't like the way a system is run, I'll just say, F that, start anew. You know what I mean? So I started my own scholarship. There was some bumps in the road, in regards to like legality and things of that nature, but I was able to circumvent that through a scholarship site host, and also embed that within my website. And that was like another issue in and of itself of embedding that information to a site. I'm not a computer science major, but I did receive help from like the product management team over at, it was at scholarship.app. So thank you to that team. Thank you. And I've run it for 3 cycles now. And I think like I, I've done like, I did it. Like I'm proud that I was able to, like host this, manage it, and actually be able to like impact the lives of these three Black queer femmes in Gainesville.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that you have been able to carry out like community or connection with those people or like anyone that applied in general? Has that been like a facet of it for you, or was it just fulfilling in itself to be able to provide that for the three
I think it was
students?
fulfilling in and of itself to just
Yeah.
be able to provide that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they were more than grateful as well. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we'll steer more into the femininity, masculinity conversation. And if I ask a question that just speaks to femininity or masculinity, you can pull the other one in because they can go together. So you can discuss your upbringing if you want, if there's nothing you've touched on, how your upbringing influenced your understanding of femininity and your alignment or diversion from that understanding. And then if you don't want to touch on that too much or already have, just how your conception of femininity has, like, how it's changed over the years and what you think caused that change.
Mm-hmm. So my upbringing, again, like Jamaican, Caribbean household, the ideal look of a woman in like a Caribbean woman, is like, she has hair on her head, she has breasts, she has waist, hips, and butt and thighs. Like that's like the image. But I did not carry any of that. You know what I mean? Um, I was always kind of like in my own realm when it came to how I appear physically. And just generally like my cultural upbringing kind of like put that into my brain, like, okay, like that's how a woman's supposed to look. Why don't I look like that? But at the same time, I didn't really care. Like I was just like chilling. But through like the proliferation of like dance hall and like media from Jamaica, when they show like videos of, like it's like women like dirty whining, like just like getting down. And like you'll see like men like on top of roofs to like jump off the roof and like juk juk type stuff. So like that was kind of like the view of women that I had growing up. I wasn't really interested in that though. So as again, like I was just chilling, just doing my own thing. But how my perception of like femininity has like changed over time. So here's how it was, right? So younger, was like girl, but like boy, and then I transitioned to like more boyish, like late elementary, yeah, like late elementary more boy, and then like kind of like tomboy, middle, ball at the beginning of high school, mask, and then like the mask became more fluid as I leaned more into my gender identity of being a non-binary individual. And now I kind of like escape the line of like masculinity and femininity. Like one day I'll be wearing like a full like I'll be wearing like a pleated skirt and like stuff. Or another day I'll be wearing like, like camel pants, camo pants, and like the shebang. You know what I mean? So now I'm just like, I just wear whatever speaks to me on a certain day.
Yeah.
Mm.
So do you think that you choosing to align more with kind of like a stricter mask presentation, was that influenced at all by, I feel like, almost a binary that was put on the queer community or the lesbian community? Because I feel like there is a conversation that has been like loosened over time and things are collectively becoming more fluid. But I feel at one point, and even in some people's heads still, there's very much like a man and a woman, or even not even in a relationship, but just in your expression. Like if you're a lesbian or if you're a queer person, you're feminine or you're masculine. So do you think that you felt inclined to stick to one, and then as you came into your queerness and your gender expression as well, that you were able to explore that more? Or was that kind of just like your natural progression?
That's a good question. I do feel like the binary did have an impact on how I kind of navigated gender identity and expression. Yeah, like there's like, this is me thinking as like a high schooler, like not having much knowledge of like what being queer is outside of that space. Um, I think that I was impacted by the binary, yes. And then as I grew to learn, like, hey, like, you can be gender expansive, that's when I became a lot more comfortable straddling the lines.
Yeah, definitely. Were there specific scenarios that you can recall where you felt like there were expectations to, I guess, act in the way that you were physically presenting? Like, were you expected to show up more masculine or more feminine based on how you looked around certain groups of people at any point?
That's a good question. Honestly, like, for the most part, I feel like people just like let me do my own thing, like, and
Good,
however I came, like, they're like,
good.
yeah, that's very
That's
positive,
how it should be. Yeah,
right?
that's awesome. I know you had your issues with masking within your family specifically, but I think outside of that, to not have that is
Yes.
good. I also think you just have a strong sense of self that you're able to maintain over multiple spaces, which is important.
Thank you, Maddie.
Yeah. Um, okay, this is more of a general question, just how your queer identity has then influenced your gender identity. So did you kind of said you came into your sexuality first and then your gender expression. Do you think that one influenced the other, or do they still kind of influence each other? How do you feel about that?
For me, like, being queer has always just been like the thing. You know what I mean? And then like me like identifying as non-binary was like this other thing. And then like they've kind of commingled together. Um I don't really know if I can say like being queer has influenced my gender identity. Honestly, yes, it has. It has. Yeah. Like I first identified when I was in high school, I was like, okay, I'm lesbian. But I where I am right now, like I don't really care. Like I'm queer. Like I'm chilling.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so we've spoken to marginalization and judgment that you've faced within personal circles.
Hmm.
Do you find that you've faced any being in the state of Florida or at the University of Florida in being queer, or like how do you perceive the marginalization that's occurring in our state
Hmm.
presently?
Oh my gosh, the state sucks. Like being queer in the state of Florida in 2024 is not an uplifting nor freeing experience. Our current president, Ben Sass, he is a terrible example of what a university president should be. He doesn't want to involve himself with the students and especially marginalized students. And not only that, he is classist, he's homophobic, just an overall like POS. I do not like that man. When it was first announced that, he'd be coming to UF to, do the whole thing at Emerson, I went and I protested against him as hundreds of other students did. He is not a face that should be representative of the UF community, and he's just like overall, he is just not a good person. He's a homophobe. It's in news articles. Um, I I just don't feel welcome by this man, and neither do the thousands of queer gators on this campus. The same goes for Ron DeSantis. Probably like he is the closest thing, one of the closest things to the devil we'll get in our lifetime. I think. Well, we never know. Things can happen. Things can happen, but
Hope not.
well, I hope not. But he has fathered legislation after legislation of hate. And that's what is shameful about, the political state of Florida, that it's based on hate and fear and dehumanization. This state is not a safe space for queer individuals. And I hope that I can find myself out of this state um, by the beginning of this summer. So I walk the stage May 6th, 2024, and hopefully I secure an internship. I'm in the interview stage process right now. That's outside the state because I don't see this as a place where that will foster my internal growth. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah, that was
Mm-hmm.
going to be my next question if it had infiltrated your personal decision to stay or leave. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely understand that. Do you think that the places you're seeking out are like specific hubs for queerness, or do you think at this rate anywhere is better than here for you? How do you feel?
So I was thinking of New York. Like I just feel
Yeah,
like that's like
okay.
the top hub for queerness, for artists like myself, for free thinkers, for abolitionists. Like New York is the place to be. And while I have visited New York City multiple times. I might be looking at it with like some like rose tinted glasses because of like where I physically am, but I see it as like a haven for me to go to. And if I don't like it, then I'll go somewhere else. You know what I mean? I don't really feel connected to any place. I don't have anything that's holding me down. No kids, no like life partner. Like I'm free to wander wherever life takes me.
Yeah, definitely. That concludes all of my like formal questions. So if there's anything that from any conversation that you wanted to elaborate on, or any other stories you wanted to add, you're more than welcome. But closing thoughts.
Closing thoughts. Yeah. I, a message for anyone that's watching it in the future. I hope that Florida improves. I love this state, but you know, you gotta leave. Like, us queer people are not safe in this state anymore. So hopefully it's better to anyone that's watching this. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you, Maddie.
Of course.